Welcome back to the channel, guys, and in this next video I wanted to start covering off how you go about actually updating your Pi-hole instance. And if you've been tuning along, you've seen that I've done quite a lot of work in the area building up to this moment where we set up the Pi-hole instance here, and then in this video we covered how to do DHCP, local DNS, and some of the horrible gotchas that I ran into with, well, wholeheartedly trusting Gemini to do all of the thinking and heavy lifting for me. So then I would just blindly just follow what it tells me to do and see what happens. We're going to do something similar again in this video. We're going to trust, hopefully this time, we're going to use Claude inside Visual Studio using GitHub Co-Pilot. That's what I'm using right here. As you can see, I've got Co-Pilot Pro. We're going to talk about that very shortly and how I use it to make my home lab experience and maintaining that kind of thing so much easier, so much more hassle and worry free. In the last video we talked about setting up local DNS records, so you can see I've got a few things that I set up. For example, how to get into my Pi-hole, so I could just use Pi-hole like that. And then before we used to do SSH like this, and it used to be a case of the IP address of my Pi-hole instance, and now you can see I could just use my DNS name. So we've come a long way, and now I've come to rely on the DHCP settings quite a lot of my home network. But below you can see all the active DHCP leases that have been released instantly, and honestly it's amazing. It's faster. This thing responds faster than your actual router would, so I do highly recommend setting up a DHCP on your home network. But eventually you scroll around and then you start seeing this big flashing red symbol at the bottom, the red text, which basically means that what do you do when there's an update available, and how easily and how stress or hassle free is it to upgrade Pi-hole when it's running as a Docker container. Now, in the world of Pi-hole and Linux servers, chances are, depending on how you installed and set up your Pi-hole instance, it may naturally come through the Linux package registries. So in this instance, we use that very system to pull down the latest Docker dependencies, but we don't pull down Pi-hole because Pi-hole we control and manage it ourselves. And then this gives us a very interesting problem. Every time we push and pull or change this particular compose script, you'll notice that it's pinned to the latest tag. What if you want to actually control the tag and you want to control the version, so you don't want to do this and you just want to do this once a year and you don't ever want to do this again? You can actually pin the version number flag. You can see that I've got it pinned to latest. That basically means that if I ever push and pull this down, it'll just grab latest. More often than not, Docker will just pick the latest one. It's got cached locally. And if you actually do want to force it to do a pull, you can do something like you can do Docker compose and then you can do a pull like this. So you can see that in my local stuff, for my local projects, I've got a compose script and I'm deliberately telling it to pull the latest pushed image from whatever registry where this thing lives, and then I want you to bring it back up again. So that's hopefully what I think we're going to do in this video. We're just going to see how easy it is to update Pi-hole to if essentially the latest version. Now they've got some guides on there. I'm going to use the Docker approach, which is I just want task Claude to go ahead and do this for me, and then in the next part of the video we'll see if it works or not. So stay tuned for that. So basically just some housekeeping. So if you're a subscriber to the channel, I really do appreciate the love. And if you're watching this for the first time, please do subscribe to the channel, because honestly these videos take a lot of time and effort to produce. But the main update I wanted to share was that I've now finally split off all my gaming content onto a brand new channel. And the thing behind this is that I just don't think that people who are interested in the tech content that I produce and make are going to be interested in all of the games that I'm playing. And to be honest with you, I did it as just a bit of a cop-out so that I could always have something to push. And eventually you'll start seeing all the gaming content dry up and it'll start going on to my new channel called Ibra Plays. If you're actually interested in a bit of both, please do subscribe to the gaming channel. As you can see, I've started slowly re-uploading all of the stuff, and I've cleaned up this channel so that when you access the channel and you see what I'm about, you can actually start seeing some of the core subjects that we've talked about, and then eventually some of these shorts will start changing too. Yeah, that's it for this one. And in the next part, we're going to jump straight into the tutorial and we're going to get Claude to start prepping the ground. I've talked about this before and I wanted to give it another quick shout out. Everything that I talk about in my videos is basically stuff that you've seen before. And if there's anything that you haven't seen before, please do comment on the channel because I do monitor it pretty daily and I will always respond to any questions that people have. But everything that I show to you, Pi-hole, Docker, Raspberry Pi, SSH, remote desktop, DHCP, all the concepts you see discussed on the channel have been covered in prior videos. So please do go back and look at some of the previous content that I've produced, such as, when I first set up my NAS project, and then eventually we upgraded Debian, we put Docker on there, we did the second official project, which was setting up the Pi-hole on there. Then we set up DHCP, which was absolutely horrendous, very difficult to set up. And now we're going to take it a little bit further by doing a very simple video about how do you actually upgrade and keep your Pi-hole server up to date, because open source software more often than not is actually actively maintained. So if you're going to consume open source software, chances are that your software will go out of date and stale, and it's, I wouldn't say morally incumbent on you, but it is important that you become an active participant and eventually learn how to modernize and keep your home labs as up to date as possible. So yeah, okay, now we're jumping into the video. So now we're going to actually go ahead and perform the update, and we're going to use VS Code with the Co-Pilot plugin. And I've already kicked off a job on the right hand side, and a couple of things to call out straight away. I have all of my stuff grouped together in a project. The whole point of this is so that we can create a Claude MD file, we can create some history with different chatbots, and more importantly, we can actually aggregate all of the important scripts that we want. Because that's the main benefit of the Docker approach, is that you can use a scripted approach and get your things up and running again should anything happen to your Pi-hole instance. That's the main thing for me. So as you can see, I've got two key Compose projects. One is my vibe coding project, which I probably will talk about at some point. But in this instance, I use it to keep an eye on and obviously fix my Docker Compose project problems for my Pi-hole and Unbound private DNS setup. And I'm not obviously advocating or plugging Co-Pilot. You can use a Co-Pilot free. I think, you get a free allocation daily, and you can use that to essentially do a lot of home lab stuff for free very quickly. Because honestly, once you get things fully set up, you don't actually need to use expensive paid for AI tooling. You can actually get away with some of the free stuff that Gemini offers. And I think there's down here, there is an auto feature which gives you a discount on your usage. I don't know if it applies to the free accounts or the free service, but I thought I'll call that out. And what we're going to do now is, because Visual Studio Code with Copilot, it's got access to the shell terminal, and on the terminal it's got access to SSH. That basically gives it almost unfettered access with permissions to go ahead and fix the things that you want it to take care of. And that's brilliant, because it's the whole benefit of this agentic AI vibe coding era, that these intelligent bots can go ahead and go do these things for you, and then you just have to learn what they've done and assign and approve what they've done. So I've kicked the job off, and you can see my prompt. I told it to probe the latest Pi-hole image versions in Docker Hub. Currently and locally we're using Docker tag. That, as you can see, is clearly 1st of November last year. That's the format they use. We can use SSH and Docker on the server itself to confirm the ID2. Once confirmed, summarize if any breaking changes in possible backup scenarios. So this is a lesson I learned from the DHCP video, where I thought the free Gemini session that I was using would magically know and feed me all the different scenarios for me and cater for all the different problems that I could not see or foresee coming. I've actually learned from that, and now I've tried to make my prompt as, I wouldn't say diverse, but I'm trying to be as all-encompassing as I can. I'm trying to think of as much scenarios that are important when doing upgrades. Most importantly is, don't lose your config and don't lose your backups, right? Perform a backup before you do anything. So let's see what it has found. Faster than the speed of light, core web UI. We're not too far behind actually, which is the latest one is the 5th, which is May 2026. The Pi confirmed image, that's the digest. I think that's the digest ID. Now points to critical security listings. Oh wow, we're quite a few behind. There are multiple security advisors in the skipped version. This is the primary reason to update. So in the previous videos where I talked about, is it channel update or housekeeping, I think I said morally incumbent, that might be a bit strict, but it is important for you to keep your home labs as up to date as possible, because things are always changing, especially in this modern world of vulnerabilities. That's what they see as critical vulnerabilities. Yes, it looks like there are 2 red vulnerabilities or 2 red updates we've missed, and some amber updates. Config break and change. See, this is important. DNS domain has got an extra suffix. If it has set it, it will need updating to that. Faster than the speed of light, likely auto migrates on first start. Backup plan before upgrading. The config is already volume mounted. Excellent, because I told it to, which covers most of it. Teleporter export. I have no idea what teleporter is. SSH backup the config volume, which is very good. Pull specific files that matter the most. Key risk, DHCP leases will be interrupted during the container recreation. Oh, this is making me worried already. Oh no. Pi-hole is on the host networking. DHCP lease survive. Recommendation update, and no breaking changes to our setup are expected beyond handles automatically. So next prompt is going to be telling Claude to scaffold upgrade plan, and then executing the upgrade plan, and then we'll see what happens. So I'm going to pause the video now. So Claude is thinking away. The next I gave it was to scaffold a migration / upgrade plan based on what we have just learned. It doesn't matter what I've learned. The most important thing is what the chatbot has learned about your environment and your things it needs to consider. So this is the next thing. I know it's very tempting just to go ahead and just click accept it, get on with it, do the job. But I know it's difficult to ask for it to say, just give me the TLDR version, because it just gives you a wall of text and your eyes to start peeling over, thinking of, I'll be bothered reading all that. And I know it's very tempting to just let these things get on with it, but I cannot insist, and I cannot overstate this. Take your time reading all of the output. Even if you have to slow things down, read everything and make sure you fully understand that what the chatbots are proposing. So I believe it's actually finished coming up with the migration plan. One of the cool things I like about this kind of phase with Copilot is that it gives you this system where you can basically up and down and navigate to all the changes it's proposing. So it's kind of not like the Claude Code experience where it just cracks things out and you have to go and look for the changes yourself. So this is kind of nice if you've got more of a coding or engineering kind of backdrop or experience, where you could appreciate exactly what it's doing, and it helps you learn a lot more. So once again, swings and roundabouts, what do you prefer, right? This is very interesting. It's actually removed the latest tag and it's actually pinning the release, which is really interesting. I have no complaints about that. So, oh wow, config injection, multiple cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. So yeah, good thing that we're doing it. Delay is not recommended. I'm going to use to copy our backups, which is very good. Backup everything. Once again, not 100% keen on any of this. Snapshot, phase 2, deploy the backups, phase 3, pull and recreate. So this is kind of what I was saying earlier, that you can just do like a Docker compose pull like I showed you earlier, and then you just bring it back up again. The dash D means detached. I don't know what that means. No dependencies in short engine are not touched. That's pretty cool. DNS and DHCP will be unavailable for 5-10 seconds while the container restarts. But this is, once again, this is the part where it gets me worried, because if it doesn't come back up again, I'm kind of screwed. Luckily, this whole process doesn't involve restarting, because that's what went wrong in the last video. I had to restart my machine, and guess what? It didn't come back up again because it didn't get a friggin' IP address assigned to it. So yes, I'm going to pause the video again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an update to the script, and I'm going to say confirm before executing all backups have succeeded, and then that'll be like a validation verification step. Once that is complete and happy, then we actually trigger the actual update, so that this way we don't actually lose anything. Because chances are, unless you specify otherwise, a chatbot is not going to go out of its own way to confirm that the backups have succeeded properly. It's a whole thing where you can get spoiled in terms of thinking that it should cover all your bases. Honestly, sometimes they don't. So I've told Claude to bake into our upgrade plan a backup strategy. So basically a confirmation verification phase. We don't actually want it to kick anything off until it's actually happy that the backups have succeeded properly, because we want a backup strategy in case the upgrade fails. And this makes the whole process a little bit more expensive and a little bit more time consuming. But this is kind of what chatbots kind of get you and coach you into thinking that once you've learned and been burnt badly, once again from the last video, this is what you have to do once you get these intelligent bots doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So let's see what it produces in its output. So the prompt has come back and it's now presenting a much more comprehensive plan. It's actually suggesting that it tags the current image, which I didn't think was a thing. It's presented a backup script and a verification script. And the interesting thing I've noticed at the very bottom is that it's come up with its own gate, quality gate, and it says quite here that all three must be checked before it proceeds on to phase 4, which is excellent. And I guess now I'm just going to tell it to crack on with it and see what happens. So stay tuned. So it seems like the backup phase is now completed. It did actually have a few issues, but as you can see, I kicked off the upgrade process and it's gone through the plan which we drafted in the previous sessions, and it's now come up with a summary of all the different gates that we told it to set up. And now it's at the point now where it's actually asking me to go ahead and perform a manual backup through the settings, which I actually didn't know was a thing. So I guess we will do that. And it's telling me a folder where it wants to put things, docker/config. Open and save. Why would I put it there for? Well, I guess we're going to find out. This is your off-box backup independent of the Pi. Once downloaded, let me know and I'll verify and then proceed to pull the new image. So I've gone ahead and done the export like it suggested from the teleporter tab in the Pi-hole UI, and I've exported the zip file straight into my downloads folder. So now we're going to do this in real time. This is actually pretty cool. I didn't know this. I've been using Claude Code quite heavily, and it's actually got this little summary prompt thing down here where it actually tells you whether the command is safe to run. This is brand new. I haven't seen this in a while. I quite like this. It has a reasonable size and contains the critical files, which is very good. I quite like that. And let's see if we're ready to actually kick off the upgrade. Pressing risk. Once again, it's very tempting to just click allow, but do take your time when you go through these steps to make sure you actually understand what's going on. Gets the properties of the Pi-hole. That's pretty good to me. So we're now making more progress. All three backup gates are confirmed. Proceed to phase 4, sync the compose file and pull the image. Yep. By the way, if it's not become abundantly obvious, this is the most easiest way for you to manage your Pi-hole. Obviously with the caveat that make sure you actually know what you're doing in each session, because things can go badly wrong. This is the most effective way to, because like there are many times when things have gone wrong with the proxy and the shared networks between my two different projects, and Claude has just been brilliant in teaching me what to go and how to fix through these things. So let's see what happens now. Starting go all clear, that's a very good sign. Recreating the Pi-hole container started, waiting 10 seconds to fully initialize before running verification. It looks like the entire thing is actually completed remarkably. I'm quite impressed. I'm waiting for it to sync Pi-hole. Yep, that looks good. I'm waiting to go back into the UI to confirm if everything's working or not. But one of the beauty of this whole approach is that Claude and SSH with terminal access can do so much more very quickly over the CLI than you ever could. And Pi-hole upgrade summary, it genuinely looks like the entire thing has succeeded. But we're going to do one more thing before we close out the video, which is what we're going to do is we're going to actually get Claude to dump everything that it's learned into a brand new upgrade document so that we don't lose anything from this session. This is very important. It's very easy and very tempting to just close the session because you've completed and you've done what you wanted to do. But in this agentic kind of like AI world that we're now in, which sadly is not going anywhere, it's very important that you leverage what the bots have learned and create your own local documentation files. And that's going to be a video we're going to explore next, which is a secure area where you can dump all your documentation that you've learned from different projects, tools, everything you've worked on in one nice, I say secure loosely, but one centralized area. So it's saying everything's back up, and again, it's saying the backups will still be there, the backup images. So I guess we'll just leave them for now. And Chrome does its thing where it auto reloads the page, and you can see there everything has been bumped already. So if we go into the DHCP section, it looks like things are working and valid as they were before. Honestly, I am incredibly impressed. I can't believe how expensive and how long this process took. It took well in excess of 10 minutes to run the scripts and do all the learnings. But everything you've seen so far, the only new stuff I've introduced in this video is literally GitHub Co-Pilot and Claude, because I seldom do I show you how I use the tools. This is the first video where I've shown you how I use the tools and the way I think about investigating problems. So the last thing, and this is the closeout now. So I've told it to produce a markdown document where we capture everything that we've learned from this one session, because this is one of the human frailties. You, as a human being with all of your flaws, will never remember everything you went through when you've done traditional software upgrades. More often than not, you will always end up creating some form of documentation. But these chatbots allow you to achieve so much quicker that you do become very overwhelmed as to how much you're expected to learn. So you cannot overstate or understate this enough, that once you've achieved what you wanted to achieve, always dump out exactly everything in as verbose and as detailed a fashion as possible, exactly what transpired in that session, so that you don't lose anything the next time you come back around. Because honestly, this stuff costs tokens and polar bears. So tongue-in-cheek joke there regarding the environment, but yes, this has been amazing. This has been successful. As you can see, everything's up and running, and I don't have to worry about this again now, because I've now got an actual upgrade process. So and that's a wrap, guys. Thanks for tuning in. And in this video, I showed you my preferred way of how I upgrade my own Docker containers and instances. Now, you can do all of this manually. You can script this manually. You can SSH into your boxes manually. You can even just RDP onto your boxes if you want to, the traditional way, and do it that way. But I showed you a rare glimpse into how I would go about doing this using Claude and GitHub Co-Pilot directly from Visual Studio Code. And it's a rare glimpse as to my actual workflow, how I think, how I iteratively, improve on the prompts, and I start thinking like the engineer that I am. If you're tuning into these videos and this is the first time you're seeing this video, hopefully I will have convinced you that running Docker on your Pi is a very good idea, and it's my preferred way, because as I've said many times before, you can set it and forget it, or you can actively maintain your Pi-hole and your Pi server, because these things need to be constantly maintained. And as you saw in the video, from a security and vulnerabilities perspective, it is always encouraged that you actively maintain and keep your home labs as up to date as possible. But yeah, that's it. That's the wrap up video. And in the next video, we're going to start jumping into, hopefully, either it's going to be a combination of OneDrive, because that's my biggest pain point at the moment. I've got a lot of OneDrive problems I need to solve. There's like 3 subjects I need to cover on OneDrive. Or it's going to be some kind of note-taking thing. I don't know. I've not quite decided. But please tune in, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Cheers, guys. Bye.